have a quorum? I didn't see who's everybody's here.
I've got the roll and we have all commission members present.
Beautiful. Okay. So item number 1, approval of minutes. I would ask for a motion to accept the minutes as submitted.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, David. Anybody else? Second?
I'll second.
All right, discussion, emendations, corrections. Hearing none, all in favor of accepting the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you very much. We move to what is the main agenda item tonight. Is Planning Commission looking for comments on their 2020 plan as to how Parks and Recreations fits into seeing what's going on in here. Perhaps the they wanted emphasis on the green planning, and there's certainly issues about parks and things, etc. So what we're really doing tonight is this is your chance to say what you think you want to say to get it carried on to the Planning Commission. Matt, is there anything you want to say about this?
I would just say that both Kelly Hilliard and Daphne Zhu, I said that wrong, it's Shu. I apologize, Daphne, are both here from the planning staff this evening. And I think Kelly, if I'm following how Conservancy Lands went, I think you're going to lead the discussion and have us. Are you going to do a presentation, Kelly, or how did you want to proceed with this?
Yeah, I got a text from Abby earlier that said she would give the PowerPoint tonight at the PRFC meeting. Is she on? Oh, great.
Apologies to everyone for the delay. I'm at City Hall and I was having wireless connectivity issues. So when I'm here at City Hall, I have that as my issue. And when I'm at home, I have 2 loud sons interrupting presentations. So
anyways, Abby, go ahead, please, whatever you want to say.
Thank you. So hi, everybody. I'm Abby Atun. I'm the Director of Planning and Community Development for the city. And we appreciate you all taking the time tonight for us to just give a brief presentation on the city's comprehensive planning process and get any feedback that you might have, particularly as it pertains to the Green City section. Just a quick introduction to our team. It sounds like you met Kelly Hilliard, our Sustainability Coordinator. We also have in our department Mark Opitz, who is our City Planner and Zoning Administrator, and Daphne Shu, who is our Associate Planner. Just briefly, what is a comprehensive plan? A comp plan is a local government's guide to community physical, social, and economic development. Comp plans are not intended to serve as land use regulations in and of themselves. Instead, what they do is they provide a rational basis for local land use decisions, and they have a 20-year vision for future planning and community decisions. So we don't expect a comp plan to have all of the answers to all the questions. Instead, it simply provides a guiding path for what the city intends to accomplish over the next 20 years. The Wisconsin Comprehensive Planning Law does not mandate how a community should grow, but it does require public participation at the local level in deciding a vision for the community's future. So within the state statute for comprehensive plans, there are several elements that are required, and these are detailed within state statute 66.1001. So we're going through that entire statute right now with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that we have included all of the details that are required. And we'll also have city attorney review of all of those details prior to the city council's approval of the comp plan. Some of the required elements are kind of rearranged and renamed within our document. So for example, the state has a required element for agricultural resources, natural resources, and cultural resources. We've split that up and we've included ag and natural within the Green City section, which is the section that you all are reviewing this evening. The cultural resources are included in the character section. So continuing on what a comprehensive plan is. Again, I mentioned that it is not a regulatory document, but state law does dictate that some ordinances must be consistent with the comp plan. Those include official mapping statutes, subdivision ordinances, zoning ordinances, and shoreland or wetland zoning ordinances. we already have included in the requested budget for the city to update our zoning ordinance next year, following on the heels of the approval of the comp plan, which we expect will likely happen early next year. We want to make sure that we're immediately turning around the most complex of our ordinances, and that's the zoning ordinance, to make sure that we're being consistent. Staff expects that we're going to update the comp plan annually, especially the mapping, but we're also going to just do a thorough annual review with key staff in the city to maintain this document as a living document going forward. We haven't done that in the past. The last comp plan that the city approved was in 2006. So plan in 2015 as a really minimal update has morphed over time, and in 2019, the city determined, the city's plan commission determined that this is a complete overhaul of the document. So everything that's included in the old plan was essentially scrapped, and we've started from scratch with the new plan. We had a kickoff meeting. We've had a public participation plan approved. 17 public input sessions have been held, and we've held 24 work sessions and discussions with our planning commission. In late September, the Plan Commission referred the document to 10 committees. This is a draft at this point, so we're open to any feedback that you all would like to provide to the Plan Commission and Common Council. We've had 3 additional committees request to see the document since the Plan Commission referral, and we're open to taking the document to any other committees and commissions that you all are on or are familiar with, or anyone can request to review the document that is interested. In November, we expect that our staff will be really busy making modifications to the document, but we are not planning to make any major policy changes at this point without the support of the Plan Commission. And the reason for that is that the Plan Commission did review the full outline, and so if we're making major changes to the outline, we need to make sure that we keep them informed of the process. Any major policy changes that are recommended by committees and commissions must be considered by the Plan Commission members prior to making the changes. We are continuing to make minor edits. An example of that is Conservancy Lands reviewed the document last week, and they suggested that we incorporate some more information about the city's efforts at minimizing the use of pesticides. And so, you know, those kinds of things that are kind of in line with current practice and current policy, those things we can easily include. I'm just talking about major policy changes. The planning and community development staff will continue to work on the introduction and implementation sections as well, and those will be reviewed by the Plan Commission. We also took this document to the Airport Commission last week, and we've gotten some feedback from individual members that this is a really broad document and it's pretty lengthy, and that it might help to include like a section, 1 page in the introduction that would have like all of the short-term goals, one that would include medium-term goals, and one that would include long-term goals. In case somebody doesn't want to review the entire document, they can kind of look at the summary in the introduction, and so we're working on that. As early as December, the city would be holding a public hearing. It would probably be before either the Plan Commission or the Common Council, or maybe both. And the public hearing would require a Class 1 notice that has to be published at least 30 days before the public hearing is held. And then, of course, Plan Commission and Common Council approval is required of the document. For tonight's meeting, what we would like from the Parks Board is for your commission to give us direction either by formal vote or by consensus of the commission, particularly with regards to the Green City section. And we're happy to answer any questions or take any comments that you all had, and hopefully you've had a chance to review the document and put some thought into it. I know you didn't have it for too long, but I hope you had a chance to do that.
Well, it was only 57 pages to read or something.
Yeah, only 57 pages. So I'm happy to answer any questions or take any comments at this time.
All right, Kelly, do you have any input you want to add to this?
Not a lot, just that for the parks and conservancy lands actions or strategies I drew from the conservancy lands plan, and the Parks and Open Space Plan. So some of the language you'll see might echo some of that, but I really welcome any feedback on that, since that's not my entire specialty. And the Sustainability Committee, is really focusing probably more on the energy and the equity and resiliency stuff, but they're probably less able to comment on directions for parks and conservancy lands.
All right, Daphne, anything you want to add in there? I know you're eating at the moment, but that's okay.
No, I think Abby and Kelly covered all of it. I'm here to take notes and stuff.
Okay.
John, if I could offer a couple of things, just one of the things that obviously the commission is aware of, and I know Abby and Kelly, I believe, is as well, is we're right now in our park and open space planning process. And I think at a minimum, we want to see some consistency in the language between both plans. And so I've shared the draft that you've seen with Becky with MSA so that she can provide, any thoughts or correlations between the two plans and try and have consistency. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the discussion from Conservancy Lands regarding chemical use. And I know that David and John both sat through that. I just kind of want to share some thoughts. I think it's a great goal to try and limit our chemical use. And I think our staff is very conscientious in doing that. The challenge we run into is that from what our research and what we're seeing with peer communities is, it's a bad situation for government to be in trying to limit chemical use because of two things. The first is the more friendly chemicals, number one, they cost more, and number two, they're less effective. So it's a bad combination. I think what we try and do is limit our use as much as we possibly can. We have some contractual obligations with sports organizations, and I think if we cut back, our policy right now is we treat athletic fields, so our baseball fields, football fields, soccer fields all receive some form of chemical treatment where we limit and follow all the guidelines and rules that are established. And we really don't treat any general park areas, playgrounds, anything like that. Our treatment is truly confined to athletic fields. In the conservancy areas, it's a little bit different in dealing with invasive. There is some more use there, but that is really, a lot of that is almost all of our chemical application is contracted out. We do very little with our own staff. So we attend, UW does field days for turf management on the golf and athletic side, and we have staff attend those and kind of learn what some of the new products are and what's available. So I think it's a good goal to have, is to try and limit our use, but I think we've also got to be realistic in what we can do, because I think there'd be some negative consequences to just saying we're strictly going to eliminate all use of chemical application.
Well, I'm also on a plan commission, so I've seen much of this document, and of course it's what we want to do, not what we absolutely can do. And I appreciate the comments. Any other comments on Matt's discussion from the committee?
Well, to start out with, I'd like to echo what Matt just said about chemicals. I don't like using them. At the same time, I recognize that trying to do something within any sort of budget constraints that we have, they're basically necessary at this point. I don't think we can try to mitigate the invasives that we have without some chemical use. So I don't think we want to get too much on a high horse on that. That's just my opinion. There is a lot of things here to go through, and I haven't gotten through everything. One thing I did have a question on was there is a portion regarding development where impervious cover would be added to an existing business where they would the business owner would be required to pay a fee in lieu of if that were to happen. And first question is a fee in lieu of what? But more importantly, second question is, should we be imposing a penalty for someone who is adding building space, parking space, et cetera, for being a successful business? I'm thinking of Sacco Foods for one, because they've had 2 large expansions relatively recently. And I know they've done some things to mitigate that, but I don't want to discourage business from being in Middleton.
I might chime in because I paid attention to that as well. And I thought this is a sort of a money versus imperviousness cost. And I said, this is just, it becomes easy for a developer at some point to just say, I'll pay you some money and sort of destroy what's going on in that surface. And I think there's got to be a better equation than simply paying a fine, or paying a fee for this thing, because that bothers me as well. Other comments? All right, let me add just something in general. We're going back to this section of the report. I was struck immediately by the discussion about street trees. And as I said, the trees are very important, and it was titled "Street Trees Are Important," as if other trees are not important. And I watched around Tiedemann's, we've got hundreds of trees that have been killed around Tiedemann's. And I think that somehow street trees are very important, but it shouldn't take away from the fact that somehow trees in every area and everywhere are important. And within parks and conservancy lands, I think that we should put an effort and energy within this document that says all trees everywhere are important, particularly street trees, but not to just simply single it out as if street trees are the only important trees that matter to the city. So it was that wording of that one statement in there that said street trees are very important to the city. I would like to see that expanded to say trees everywhere are important to the city.
That's a good catch.
I don't remember exactly where it was, but it clearly kind of highlighted just street trees. And I like the whole notion and sense, but like I say, I would like every one of our parks, instead of filling them up with soccer fields that have nothing but street views, why can't we fill them with soccer fields and have trees around the sides and the edges and just do more of that, of the forestry, I think is really important.
And John, I know our forestry and parks folks would be upset if I didn't mention this, but anything you can do to share with your neighbors that we have Woodside Heights on our radar. We're a little swamped right now in trying to get some projects finished before we got snow on the ground. And that's a project that we'd actually prefer some frost in the ground so that we're not making a bigger mess by taking those down. So they are planned for removal. We're going to get to them.
That's all right.
Yeah. Well,
I figured
I know you're very understanding of it, but we've got some folks that seem to think it needs to get done tomorrow, and it's not really a reality for us right now.
Well, you got the drainage ditches in, but now you got big piles of dirt.
And they're trying to get those out as soon as things dry out enough to not make a bigger mess pulling it out of there.
I just personally think the whole green cover thing is important. And when there are places that don't need to just be open, where we could put trees anywhere here and there, it doesn't have to intrude on other things. I think every tree that goes in is a benefit. So I just would like to see that worded in such a way that reflects trees, not just street trees. So if you could convey that, that would be helpful. Right. Other comments, questions, concerns?
I have a question
Sure.
along those same lines. Under E, it says identify and fund climate appropriate tree species.
Yeah.
I'm wondering how you do that. How do you identify climate appropriate trees, and what is the criteria? I mean, what trees would be climate appropriate versus some that aren't?
I think that might have been in relationship to their carbon sequestration potential, which I think varies. Well, I think it's mostly how big trees are, but I'm not sure about on the science about that. And that's something that I should look into further and either clarify the language or make a call out box or, change how that's stated.
That would be helpful because you could read it as we're going to put in palm trees and magnolias. And I mean, in some level, that might happen in 10 or 15 years, who knows?
Well, we had this conversation some time ago, and the city forester came in and gave us some information on what species they were using and why and in what capacity. So I think the city forester, Matt, you may disagree, but I think the forester is well armed with that information already.
Yeah.
Well, I think this all has to be balanced, right? You've got to diversify.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing that we could do with this statement is we give residents some voice in their street tree within certain parameters. And if we could educate on which of the street trees are going to give the greatest bang for climate, I think that would play well, and it might help folks make decisions on what terrace tree they're selecting or working with the city forester on placing out front with diversity and making sure that we've got, all the things that Mark and now Tony are emphasizing in how we plant and address those issues. I think, it's all part, and I know that Mark and Tony want to see, the best climate appropriate trees as well. So I think this is an easy one to get behind.
Well, I concur as well. I think the more information you give a homeowner, if you give them a choice and the reasons behind the choices, you might do much better than just saying, here's a list of trees. Other comments, questions, concerns?
Just a nitpicking point. Are trees going to absorb excess flood waters?
Yes. That's a really big reason. That's a really big reason to plant trees in the first place, is just how much water that they take up during flooding and any rain events.
I would agree under normal rain events, but I think I would argue that the trees didn't absorb very much excess flood water in the corridor 2 years ago.
Not the cottonwoods, huh?
No, so
Yeah, we just needed more trees, Mark.
oh, okay.
The thing about the challenge that I had with a lot of this is that my training's in landscape architecture, and I really realized that all of these things are so site specific. It's hard to make a generality about really important things when they really need to be site specific. Like saying we should plant a bunch of trees in the creek corridor would be a very wrong way to approach restoration in the creek corridor. But having more trees in the city in appropriate areas with the appropriate species, which Mark Wagner would know what those are, is a good thing. So it is so site specific that it's hard to make an overarching generalized statement that doesn't just get completely diluted.
Well, I'll go back to my issue because I brought it up first with the trees, is that, yes, I think more trees are better. But I think it's not defeating this location specific issue. I understand that completely, but it's more as a general sense when it just said street trees, is that trees in general should be looked at as an important aspect of how we conserve our air or water and deal with other thing in that. So the trees in general should be an important component of this thing, not just street trees.
Yes, I agree with you, John.
All right, other comments, questions?
Can I bring something up that doesn't really relate to parks, but something I saw that concerns me a little bit on the document?
Bring it up and we'll see where it goes.
Say it again.
Bring it up and we'll see where it goes.
Okay, on page 15, to be very brief, on page 15, there's conversations about a flood overlay map. And then on page 60, there's a conversation about supporting home ownership. And that actually can be, I think, a bit of a contradiction, because if a flood overlay map is produced, it will become more difficult for first-time home buyers to purchase a home, because the lender, if there is a lender, is going to see this information and likely will require flood insurance, which is pretty expensive. And so I don't disagree on the surface with flood overlay maps. The unintended consequence is that it's going to, in my opinion, harm the ability for first-time home buyers or businesses to purchase in those locations. So, you know, again, that's not related to our commission, but it's something I think needs to at least be looked at.
So I'll jump in, and Abby or others, please comment. But I think that the idea of a flood overlay district was a recommendation from a plan that some UW students worked on for the Creek Corridor, and it really focused on the businesses around the confluence pond in terms of what it would do is require them to have flood insurance, which, and I may be missing some of the details, but based on what we experienced in 2018 would be beneficial to a lot of those businesses.
Yep. This came out of a recent study that was undertaken by the Water Resources Commission to update the 100-year and the 500-year floodplain map. And those were accepted by the city council, but there hasn't been any implementation mechanism at this point. It's something that we're continuing to research, and we plan to bring a recommendation forward to the Common Council probably sometime next year. All of the properties that were where the floodplain increased, the 100-year and the 500-year, they're all commercial properties. If there were any residential, it likely would be multifamily, and it wouldn't probably be single family or owner occupied housing. But we did hear from some of the businesses that if they were in a flood overlay district, that would be beneficial to them, because some businesses had applied for flood insurance and were denied insurance coverage because they weren't in an overlay district, whereas some of the businesses that were affected did have flood insurance. Most notably, all the buildings that were owned by Livesey Company were covered, and that was very beneficial to them to have that, because, you know, with the on the private damage side, the August 2018 flood caused about $38 million in damage. So I appreciate the comment, Jim, and we'll look into it further to see if any properties that would likely be single family would be affected, but I think that it's probably mostly commercial, like Matt said.
Okay, thank you, Abby.
I've got another couple general comments here. There's an awful lot of discussion about doing a lot of planning in various fashions, and you know, again, nothing wrong with that. I guess I'd like to point out, though, that this is a 10-year plan, and we're now 4 years behind, 5 years behind, and releasing it. So we obviously have issues with getting the planning that we're already required to do done, and I don't want to see us dig too much more of a hole than we're already in. So that's the first thing. Also, there's a couple places where the wording on this is kind of along the lines of the city shall, the city will, and there's a lot of lofty goals here, and nothing wrong with setting lofty goals for yourself, but I hope they present themselves as goals and not something that this document's requiring of the city.
Yeah, I don't think that there are any like legal requirements that the city undertake all of those plan updates like you mentioned. Where we would potentially run into issues is if we're not following the future land use map, or if our ordinances are not consistent with this document. But I appreciate the comment, David, because we, you know, Middleton has a very small staff, and sometimes I think we all want to do everything because it's all important. And so we'll kind of go through it again with a fine tooth comb and make sure that it's reasonable.
I mean, I get all that, and I agree. And it's not necessarily a matter of legality, but I think you dilute the impact of the document when you put a bunch of stuff out there that you, in essence, know you're not going to be able to achieve. And I just don't like putting something out that your defense on not getting it done was, well, we never really thought we were going to do that anyway. Why put it in?
So David, just a comment from my years of fundraising. If you want somebody to give $5,000, you ask them for 20,000. They say, that's too much, I can only give you 10. And you're still better than you started out. I think, to me, I like the idealism in here, because none of us know this is not all going to happen. Most of it won't happen. But I would rather shoot a little hard and high, personally, and have us fail, and our failures are still better than what we ever thought we really were going to do.
And shooting high is fine, but I think changing a little bit of wording here and there so that it looks like it's a goal and not something that we're committing ourselves to will do the same thing.
Duly noted. Thank you. All right, other comments, questions, concerns? All right, we've been asked tonight to either sort of pass a motion that we support in general this portion of the report, or we can just go on consensus and essentially give the sense that we support it without an actual motion. Do you have any comments on that? Abby, what do you think would be best here?
I guess if you feel comfortable, a motion would be preferable. If you don't feel like you've had enough time to review it in detail, then a consensus would also be a fine option. Speaking of just a quick summary, and I don't know if I've missed any of the points that we've heard, and I don't know if these are things that you would want to formalize into a motion, but there was the initial comment about fees in lieu, and I think I found the page quickly that you were referring to within the Green City section, and it looked like that was related to stormwater management and additional impervious surface. That is reflective of the city's current practice. In terms of stormwater management, we have a review process when additional impervious surface is added, and if they can't meet the city's stringent stormwater requirements, one option that the Water Resources Commission can recommend is paying fees in lieu of. The goal being that new development covers the costs of managing their stormwater. I don't think that that's something that the city would want to stray from. So just a quick comment on that. The comment that John made and several people agreed with about all trees being important, not just street trees, we've noted that. There was a section, a comment about the appropriate tree species for climate change, climate mitigation, and we'll work with the city forester on that and make sure that we've included that in the document or fleshed that out a bit more so it's clear. And then also maybe combing through all of the recommendations for additional planning and maybe changing some of the language so that we're not saying shall and will, just in case. We want to keep the big idealist vision, but in case we aren't able to accomplish all of the goals, we want to give ourselves some leeway there. Were there any other comments that I missed that were substantive changes that we needed to make, or that? And again, I don't know if these are all comments that the whole commission would want to include in a recommendation.
Well, it seems to me you followed through pretty well on that. Nobody objected to most of those. So my presumption would be that we don't have a big disagreement, but any comments to Abby?
I have,
Yeah.
I've noted several places of little tiny edits that I'm going to forward on to folks, but we don't need to discuss those here. Otherwise, I would be happy to make a motion that, we approve this section in general format.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second to that? I'll second it. Could I make an amendment to your motion, perhaps?
Please do.
Instead of approving it, that we, could you say it again, how you said it was
Well, I'm not exactly sure how to word it, but I don't want to make it sound like it's every I is dotted and T is crossed. It's very good. A lot of work has gone into it, and I admire the document, but I think we need to allow some wiggle room for future changes.
Okay.
So
give
we'll
us
leave
your
that up
motion.
to Matt when he writes up the motion to improve.
A motion instead of we approve, something is sort of we support
There you go.
construct of given the considerations, the additional comments, we support the nature of what was in that section. I don't know.
Just really quickly, in the quick summary that I gave, I've also noted down the comments from staff. So Matt in particular, regarding the comments about pesticide use and also consistency with the Parks and Open Space Plan.
Yeah.
So we have those comments as well.
All right, so we have a vague motion and a vague second. Any other comments or questions before we take a vote? All right, hearing no comments, all those in favor of the motion? Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Thank you very much. So you have our not blessing, but our oomph to go forward. So, all right, there are no other items on the agenda, so I would entertain a motion to quit.
I'll move that we adjourn.
Second.
In a second. All right. All those in favor, click the leave button.
Aye.
All in favor, say aye.
you.
All right. Thank you all. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Thanks a lot.
Abby.
Bye, everyone.